The drones flew over the airbase, showing some of the most powerful planes in the world, capable of carrying missiles and even nuclear bombs. These drones took off from trucks that traveled all over Russia until they reached these strategic points. Some are so remote that they made the Kremlin believe they would never be hit by the war that started in Ukraine. The smoke and fire showed the mistake of underestimating a much smaller enemy that was adapting to fight against one of the most powerful nations in the world. Zelensky, cornered in the White House in front of the American president and the vice president, surrounded by journalists, heard Trump say that he had no leverage. Faced with the power of the Russians, who could conquer Ukraine in 3 days.
Let me tell you, you don't have the cards. It seemed, however, that even in the face of so many difficulties, there were indeed some tricks up their sleeve. Some that seemed straight out of the very movies the United States produced.
One that not even Trump's armed forces had the audacity to do. The news of the explosions began to spread throughout Russia as soon as the sun rose on the first day of June 2025. Government-controlled news outlets tried to calm the population, but the video spread through other channels. The new Ukrainian attack inside Russian territory began to be confirmed. This one had the feel of an action and espionage movie, with technology used to make the Russian generals tremble. It was a loss of billions of dollars in a group of weapons that were among the stars of Moscow's armed forces, their planes, bombers. The threat didn't stop there. Derailed trains, important figures assassinated, vital industries hit. These things were starting to worry the Kremlin. That could have been a much quieter month. The fighting in Donetsk was advancing steadily. The Kremlin's territorial gains were constant and uncontested, spreading the Russian flag across eastern Ukraine. Even with losses, the control of new territories showed Russia's initiative and Kyiv's precarious position of either defending or retreating. The front lines in Zaporizhia, Kharkiv, and Kherson were relatively stable compared to Donetsk, but there was a new major advance overall. Russia opened another front after managing to expel the Ukrainians 8 months after the invasion of Kursk. In addition, planes and drones constantly flew over Russian skies and the invaded regions of Ukraine, dropping bombs on military and civilian structures. It was a nightmare lasting years, caused by different Russian instruments, among them the Tu-95MS and the Tu-22M3. The Tu-95MS was a long-range, turboprop strategic bomber used to launch cruise missiles like Kh-101. In December 2024, one of these missiles hit a power plant in Dnipro. The Tupolev Tu-22 used missiles like the Kh-22 against land and naval targets. One of them hit a civilian building in Dnipro in 2023, killing 46 civilians, including 6 children. Kyiv knew that the fighting at the front was not in its favor. Its strategy was to threaten Russia where it was most precious. Hence, the threats made by 2 of its military branches specialized in intelligence services, the Security Service of Ukraine and the Main Intelligence Directorate. The Security Service of Ukraine, or Security Service of Ukraine, is Ukraine's main internal security agency, responsible for counterintelligence, fighting terrorism, and organized crime. Reporting directly to the president, it is classified as a military formation with agents holding ranks. Created in 1991, the Security Service of Ukraine was seen as corrupt and repressive until 2014, when it was reformed to eliminate Russian infiltration. Since then, it has acted against Russia and separatist groups in the Donbass. Among the security service of Ukraine's activities was the hunt for Russian General Igor Kirillov inside Russia, an example of operations on enemy territory. The Ukrainians found him in Moscow, leaving his apartment. The explosion engulfed a man and one of his assistants, shattering windows and cars around them. Kirillov, head of the Russian nuclear and chemical weapons defense programs, was killed in December 2024. The Main Directorate of Intelligence, also called Main Directorate of Intelligence or Main Directorate of Intelligence, is Ukraine's main military intelligence agency, directly linked to the Ministry of Defense. Created in 1992 after the reorganization of the national intelligence system, its mission is to protect the country's interests and security on several fronts. Operating in strategic areas such as politics, economy, technology, and security, the Main Directorate of Intelligence collects and analyzes crucial information for Ukrainian defense. Among its responsibilities are monitoring and neutralizing threats to national security, combating terrorist and criminal activities, and establishing cooperation with international intelligence services. The Main Directorate of Intelligence had to be prepared for all activities related to Russian attacks. On May 29, 2025, the Russians launched another one of their major attacks with missiles and drones against military and civilian targets in Odessa. This time, the Dan-M drone joined the attackers. The Dan-M, originally a jet-powered aerial target for training and air defense testing, was converted by the Russian Federation into an unmanned attack aerial vehicle. The new weapon could reach a maximum altitude of approximately 9 kilometers, with a flight time ranging from 25 to 40 minutes. And it could travel at speeds from 400 kilometers per hour to 750 kilometers per hour. The Main Directorate of Intelligence assigned its technicians to adapt a mobile anti-aircraft missile system equipped with R-73 missiles. He was the one who shot down Dan-M. The crime successively sent hundreds of drones and missiles against Ukrainian cities, often hitting civilian targets and causing deaths among women and children. Every month, the number of projectiles sent against Ukraine increased. It was a process that had been happening for 3 years, destroying much of the country's infrastructure. The Security Service of Ukraine and the Main Directorate of Intelligence began to establish plans to retaliate against these attacks. New drones were developed day after day. Many flew towards Russia, hitting various military targets or important oil or gas production sites. In May of 2025, just before Operation Spiderweb caused panic among the Russians, Ukraine used its operatives to set fire to a Russian plane at the Rostov-on-Don airfield. Sources vary on the type of aircraft, but some say it was a Su-30 SM or a Su-27. It was clearly one of the tests against surveillance at these locations. Later that month, aerial drones from the primary unit of the Main Directorate of Intelligence flew over Crimea, a territory controlled by Russia. Also in 2014, these aircraft were prepared to cut through the skies over long distances. These nocturnal predators hunted prey such as the Russian P-18 radars, equipment known for its ability to detect stealth targets. The air defense systems were hunted in the darkness, consumed by explosions caused by drones that went undetected, even by more modern equipment. The Magura drones were a highlight during this period. These sea hunters sailed at more than 70 kilometers per hour with an operational range of 800 kilometers. Their capabilities were multiple, being able to launch smaller drones or even fire missiles like the R-73 or the Air Intercept Missile 9 Sidewinder, and they became the terror of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, sinking their ships or forcing the Kremlin to withdraw them from their historic base in Sevastopol, Crimea, to Novorossiysk, a port on the eastern part of the Black Sea in Russia. It was, in fact, one of these drones, armed with an R-73 or an Air Intercept Missile 9, that was involved in yet another attack against the Black Sea Fleet. In their new port, the Russians deployed specialized groups to try to stop the drones and also put their planes in the sky. They managed to stop some of them. But during that time, one of the Ukrainian vehicles detected one of the Russian sturdy planes. It fired the missile, which hit the aircraft directly, turning it from a plane into a submarine. It was the first time in history that this type of shoot-down happened, although helicopters had already been shot down like this before by the Ukrainians themselves. Later, an explosion in Crimea showed that the security service of Ukraine's drones had reached the depots of the 126th Russian Brigade in Pervalno. Russian equipment, weapons, and fuel were destroyed still in May of 2025. The Ukrainians launched a joint attack with unmanned surface and aerial vehicles to destroy a Neva radar and gas production platform. In the Black Sea, the series of destruction was testing the Russian limits to defend against the new Ukrainian drones and the strategies of the Security Service of Ukraine and the main Directorate of Intelligence on May 24th. The drones attacked a fuel train in the Zaporizhia region, which is occupied by Russia. The strikes set at least 3 cars on fire that would have been used to supply the troops. The day of one of the most secret operations of the Security Service of Ukraine and the main Directorate of Intelligence was getting closer and closer. The result of one of the main Directorate of Intelligence tests was seen when helicopters and ambulances started moving in Vladivostok, where the 47 Degrees Airborne Assault Battalion is based. It's under the command of the 155 Degrees Marine Brigade, a unit that was accused by Ukrainian authorities of involvement in the killings of civilians in Bucha, Irpin, and Hostomel. Military personnel and equipment were damaged at a location thousands of kilometers away from Ukraine. Explosion. 2 bridges collapsed in the border regions of Kursk and Bryansk during the early morning hours. Also, at the end of May, probably due to explosions. In Bryansk, a region that borders Ukraine, a road bridge collapsed onto the tracks on Saturday night, causing a passenger train bound for Moscow to derail and killing at least 7 people. In Kursk, also on the border with Ukraine, a railway bridge collapsed during the early morning hours, causing a freight train to derail and injuring the engineer. According to official reports, the spider web was woven and was beginning to catch its prey. It was on June 1st that the operation was finally launched. Preparation took 18 months. And the approval came on a night after a record attack of nearly 500 Russian drones and missiles against various targets in Ukraine. While their cities were under attack, the Ukrainians were in the final phase of Operation Spiderweb. It all started more than a year earlier when dozens of drones equipped with high explosive charges were assembled and stored. Billy. The Ukrainians were already used to preparing this equipment for their kamikaze attacks against vehicles or against infantry on the battlefield. For months, a covert operation was meticulously planned, and these drones were infiltrated into Russian territory without raising suspicion. Reports suggest that Ukrainian agents may have even built first-person view drones using materials acquired within Russia. But the real masterstroke was in the camouflage. These drones and explosives were then embedded inside wooden mobile homes, small modular housing units, which were loaded onto regular cargo trucks. That way, the equipment could travel thousands of kilometers disguised as harmless cargo without arousing suspicion on Russian roads. At the right moment, Without warning or the presence of any Ukrainian operator, the swarm of drones would be released remotely. The next step for the security service of Ukraine was to recruit Russian truck drivers who had no knowledge of their illicit cargo. They were hired by businessmen to deliver wooden cabins to various locations in Russia. This secret logistics route was an integral component of the operation's deception strategy. The web extended to 5 main points near important air bases, where bombers often used to blow up structures in Ukraine were stationed. It was on June 1st, 2025, at such great distances that they were in different time zones, that the annoying sounds of the first drones were recorded. In Ukraine, that was the sound of dread for the soldiers. Meanwhile, deep in the interior of Russia, it was just a mere curiosity. Those little electronic demons searched for the targets trapped in the web. The displays detected the stationary planes, all fueled up to bomb Ukraine. They swooped down hungrily on the most vulnerable parts. As the explosions began, the footage stopped being just a mere curiosity or nuisance and started showing the first blasts. When the command gave the signal, the roofs had opened by remote control and the drones took off directly from the vehicles. Some civilians desperately tried to stop the drones when they began to realize the damage they were causing. It was fruitless in the face of the terror that was spreading. The drones flew, filmed by people impressed by the columns of smoke, illustrating the destruction inside Russia. The footage showed the small quadcopters heading in to strike, a prey thousands of times heavier, yet inert and defenseless, resting at the air bases. Each of these swarm pests flew over the runways, witnessing how their brothers were already devouring some of the planes. They were Tupolev 95, Tupolev 22, M3, Tupolev 160, and A-50, all consumed by fire. Some were relics of the Soviet Union, modernized, but no longer produced. The smoke coming out of the bellies of those steel giants was frightening, a sign that many of those drones had managed to find their target. A demon worth a few $1,000s pierced the steel of planes that cost millions. Zada. The drones used were small black quadcopters, simple but capable of carrying relatively heavy loads. Operating as first-person view or first-person view drones, they allowed for precise and maneuverable flight through goggles or real-time video transmission. The remote control was done via satellite or internet connection, specifically using 4G long-term evolution networks with the ArduPilot autopilot software, an open-source platform that ensured stability even with delay or signal loss. Each of the 117 drones would have its own operator. A crucial technological breakthrough was the use of artificial intelligence for guidance. Systems were trained with decommissioned Soviet aircraft to identify structural weak points, such as fuel tanks and underwing pylons. This precision allowed the drones, even lightweight ones, to cause catastrophic damage by hitting vulnerable areas. Although they navigated mainly by global positioning system, they likely had the ability to bypass Russian jamming through manual piloting or artificial intelligence-assisted navigation. The Olenia Air Base in the Russian Arctic housed strategic nuclear bombers, including Tupolev 22M3, 95S, 95MS, and Tupolev 160, which were moved there for refuge. An attack with first-person view drones launched from a nearby gas station hit the base, causing multiple explosions and fires. Residents reported at least 10 explosions, with images confirming the destruction of 2 to 3 Tupolev 95MS and 2 Antonov 12 aircraft. Sources estimate 3 to 5 aircraft lost. The Belaya Air Base in the heart of Siberia became the most distant and symbolically significant Ukrainian target of the war. The base, home to the 200th Heavy Bomber Regiment, housed an exceptional concentration of Russian strategic aircraft. 52 bombers relocated to the interior, believing they were out of reach. Operation Spiderweb disproved that assumption. Drones launched from a nearby box truck penetrated the defenses. Eshpel, the governor of Irkutsk, Igor Kobzev, publicly admitted the attack, while residents reported explosions. The Diaghilevo base, located near Moscow and previously targeted in earlier attacks, was hit again. First-person view drones managed to penetrate the defenses and cause explosions in the aircraft area, while the local government downplayed the damage, claiming that only one house was damaged by a drone crash. Observers reported 7 explosions at the site. The base, which housed Tupolev-90, 5MS and Tupolev-22M, 3 strategic bombers, and served as a training center, had its actual damage status obscured. A CDU. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that no aircraft were hit, but Ukrainian sources suggested that A-51 airborne warning and control system radar planes may have been affected. In Ivanovo-Severn, 500 kilometers from the border, drones targeted A-50 planes, which are crucial for Russian aerial intelligence. Despite the security service of Ukraine's confirmation, the actual damage seems uncertain, with Moscow claiming an effective defense. Meanwhile, Ukrainka in the Russian Far East, 6,000 kilometers from Ukraine, houses Tupolev-95 nuclear bombers. The attempted attack was foiled by a truck, which burned on the way. A curious Russian tried to check inside just at the moment when there was a detonation. Ukraine claimed to have hit 41 strategic bombers and destroyed at least 13 aircraft, with an estimated cost of 2 to 7 billion United States dollars in damages. The Security Service of Ukraine stated that 34% of the Russian fleet of strategic cruise missile carriers was damaged or destroyed. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the attacks but downplayed the damage, stating that aircraft were only damaged in Murmansk and Irkutsk, and that the attacks were repelled in other regions. The paranoia in the following days led to huge lines of trucks standing still. In the middle of a war against one of the most powerful nations in the world, Ukraine, much smaller, had to develop new strategies to defend itself. Russia started a war 3 years ago, which ended up turning a nation with disorganized and unmotivated armed forces into one of the most innovative and deadly military forces, with drones capable of striking fear into a fleet, shooting down planes, and attacking in the most remote parts of enemy territory.